Imagine for a second that you're sitting in 19F. It's December 24th, 1971. You're 17 years old, and the only thing on your mind is the holiday dinner waiting for you at the end of Lanza, Flight 508. Below, the Amazon is just a sea of endless, carpeted green. It looks soft from this height. Inviting, even. Normal, right? But then, the sky does something strange. It turns a bruised, sickly purple, a color that shouldn't exist in nature. You hear the ice cubes rattling in the plastic cups of other passengers as the plane takes a sudden, sharp dip. A few nervous laughs ripple through the cabin. That classic human defense mechanism when we're scared but don't want to admit it. But Juliane, she's looking at the wing. She sees a blinding flash of white lightning strike the outer engine. And then, the sound. It wasn't a bang. It was a groan. A deep, metallic scream of tearing aluminum that tells you, deep in your gut, that the laws of physics have just abandoned you. The chatter stops instantly. In its place is a silence, so heavy it feels like it's crushing the air right out of your lungs. Juliane's mother turns to her, and with a voice that is terrifyingly calm, a voice that has already accepted death, she says, "Now it's all over." Those are the last words Juliane will ever hear her mother speak. Because a second later, the world rips open. The floor vanishes. One moment, you're in a pressurized cabin. The next, you're strapped to a row of 3 seats, plummeting 10,000 feet into a dark, green abyss. Just you, the howling wind at terminal velocity, and a thin seatbelt holding you to a piece of debris. Most people would die of a heart attack before ever hitting the ground. But for Juliane, the fall was the easy part. How do you even begin to process waking up on a forest floor after falling 2 miles from the sky? When Juliane opened her eyes the next morning, the silence of the cabin was long gone. It was replaced by the deafening, rhythmic pulse of the jungle, the relentless buzz of cicadas, the distant, territorial screams of howler monkeys, and the heavy, rhythmic drip of humidity falling from giant leaves. She was still buckled into that triple-seat bench. It had acted like a primitive parachute, slowing her descent just enough through the thick canopy. Her collarbone was snapped, her knee was a mangled mess of torn ligaments, and her arm had a deep, jagged gash. But here's where the psychology gets interesting, and where most of us would have failed. Juliane didn't panic. She didn't scream for help. Why? Because she was the daughter of world-renowned zoologists. She didn't grow up in a classroom. She grew up in this green hell. She knew that in the Amazon, panic is a luxury that only the dead can afford. She called for her mother, a thin, cracking sound that felt pathetic against the vastness of the trees, but the jungle didn't answer back. It just stared at her with 1,000 unseen eyes. She was 17 years old, wearing nothing but a sleeveless mini dress and missing one sandal. She was essentially a ghost in a place that specializes in recycling life. As a storyteller, I find myself constantly asking, at what point does a human mind simply shut down from the sheer scale of the isolation? For Juliane, that wasn't an option. She knew the statistics of plane crashes, and she knew the biology of the jungle. Neither were in her favor. And yet, there she was, standing up, dripping with rain, and looking at a wall of green that was already preparing to swallow her whole. Adrenaline is the ultimate liar. It's a chemical mask that makes you feel like you can walk on a broken leg, right up until the moment it wears off and reality hits you like a freight train. Juliane realized within hours that the crash site was a tomb. The canopy above was so dense that rescue planes could fly over her for 100 years and never see a single spark of her dress. She had a choice that would define her: stay with the dead and wait for a miracle, or walk into the unknown. She chose the unknown. She remembered her father's voice, a memory that functioned like a ghost whispering instructions in her ear. Water is life, Juliane. Find a trickle, follow it to a stream, find the river. Humans always build their lives near the water. Every step was a physical and mental assault. Without her glasses, The world was a terrifying blur of shifting shadows and hidden predators. Imagine the mental fortitude it takes to slide through waist-deep, stagnant swamps, knowing that a bushmaster snake or a black caiman could be inches from your bare skin, perfectly camouflaged in the mud. By day 3, the Christmas dinner she was supposed to have felt like a dream from a past life, or perhaps a different person entirely. There was no warmth here, no carols, only the rhythmic, haunting slap-slap of her one remaining sandal hitting the mud. The hunger was intense, but the thirst was a different beast. She drank the murky, parasite-filled water, whispering a prayer that it wouldn't kill her before the jungle did. But the most terrifying horror wasn't the predators she could see. It was the ones she couldn't. On the 4th day, she noticed a strange, rhythmic tingling in the gash on her arm. When she pulled back the torn fabric of her dress to look, she didn't see blood. She saw movement. Hundreds of them. Blowflies had found her while she was unconscious at the crash site and laid their eggs in her open wound. Maggots were now thriving in her living tissue, literally eating her alive while she was still walking. It's one thing to face a lion. It's another to feel yourself being slowly consumed from the inside out while you're trying to find the will to take the next step. Most people would have surrendered to the madness right there. But Juliane just looked at her arm, processed the biological reality, and kept walking. She had to find the river. By day 9, Juliane Koepcke was no longer a human being in the traditional sense. She had become a biological machine operating on a single, primal line of code: survive. She had lost nearly all her body weight, her ribs protruding like the hull of a wrecked ship. Her skin was a map of infections, insect bites, and fever chills. She had stopped walking because her legs simply couldn't support her weight anymore. Instead, she was floating, letting the river's sluggish current carry her skeletal frame downstream. This is the stage where this survival psychology becomes almost supernatural. She began to experience the third man factor. Auditory hallucinations where she heard her mother's voice calling from the deep brush, or her father's laughter echoing off the water. Hallucinations are the brain's final distress signal, a warning that the fuel tank is empty. But then, through the haze of a fever, she saw it. A small, wooden boat tied to a riverbank. For a moment, she thought it was another trick of her dying mind. She didn't run. She didn't even have the strength to crawl properly. She dragged herself inch by inch up the bank toward a small hut with a palm leaf roof. It looked abandoned, but it smelled of humans. Inside, she found a small can of gasoline left by woodcutters. And this is the part of the story that still haunts me every time I tell it. She remembered a trick her father used on their hunting dogs to remove parasites. She took that gasoline and poured it directly into the open, maggot-infested wound in her arm. The pain wasn't just heat. It was a white-hot explosion in her nervous system. She watched, in a detached, almost clinical silence, as dozens of parasites began to crawl out of her skin to escape the caustic chemicals. She didn't scream. She didn't faint. She just watched them, a cold observer of her own suffering. That is the point of no return. That is the moment where the human spirit detaches from the body's pain to ensure the body's survival. She lay on that dirt floor as the sun began to set, listening to the rain pound on the roof. She was prepared to die in that hut, but she was refusing to give up until her heart physically stopped beating. She had done everything she could. Now, it was up to the world to decide if she lived. The next morning, the ghosts finally became flesh and blood. 3 Peruvian woodcutters stumbled upon the hut and stopped dead in their tracks. To them, Juliane didn't look like a crash survivor. She looked like a water goddess from their local legends, blonde, deathly pale, and emerging like a spirit from the river. They were terrified to approach her. But then she spoke, not in the language of spirits, but in a clear, albeit weak, Spanish. "I am a girl who was on the Lance of Flight." In that one sentence, the mystery of Flight 508 was solved. Out of 92 souls on that plane, she was the only one left on this earth. When she was finally reunited with her father, the world didn't just see a survivor. They saw a living miracle. But was it really a miracle? Or was it the inevitable result of a mind so deeply tuned to the laws of nature that even death couldn't find a way in? Today, Juliane is a respected scientist, a woman who dedicated her life to the very jungle that tried to claim her. She says she still dreams of the Amazon, but not with terror. She sees it as the place that gave her life twice. Now, I want to ask you, and I want you to be honest with yourself. If you were in that hut, staring at that can of gasoline, would you have the cold-blooded strength to do what she did? Or is there a limit to what the human mind can endure before it breaks? Let's talk about it in the comments below. I read every single one of them because your perspective on these stories is why I do this. If Juliane's journey moved you today, if it made you rethink the boundaries of your own willpower, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that these human stories still matter. And if you're not part of our community yet, hit subscribe. We have many more dark paths to walk together.